We're following breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ. Texas and Oklahoma appear set to depart the Big 12. CBS Sports college football writer Dennis Dodd reporting that the Longhorns and Sooners could declare their intentions to leave the league within the next 24 to 48 hours. Now, Texas and Oklahoma, founding members of the league back in 1996 when the Southwest Conference merged with the Big 8. And now it looks like those schools could be on their way to the SEC, which would form the nation's first 16-team super conference. The SEC already formidable when it comes to the college football playoff. You can see their record of 11-4, while the Big 12 at 0-4. And speaking of Dennis Dodd, we're now happy to have him alongside Barrett, Sallee. Dennis, I'll just come to you, start with you here on this. Are you surprised with how quickly that this has all advanced?
Yes and no. You remember the original report was that this was going to happen within 2 weeks. At the time, I was surprised at that, but in the 2 days since, I guess I'm not. There's a report out there that Texas and Oklahoma were talking to the SEC for the last 6 months. I talked to a Big 12 administrator this morning who says there was a sense of betrayal. Bob Bowlesby, the commissioner, thought he had a great relationship with the ADs and presidents at both schools, and apparently this was going on under his nose. So yeah, it looks like it's going to happen. It could be within 2 days. It could be in the next few weeks, but it's going to happen quickly. And then we'll have to sort out, what happens to the Big 12. When is the next question? When do Texas and Oklahoma join this league? Is it next year, in which case they would owe up to $80 million in exit fees each? Or is it in 4 years? They save some money and go through a really, really bad divorce for 4 years.
Yeah, divorce is the right word, Dennis. And, it is all about money, right? You said up to $80 million in exit fees, but you look at the SEC's new contract, how quickly would Texas and Oklahoma be able to make up for that lost revenue? I don't know. We'll see. It's all about the bottom line. And it's also about hurt feelings. Let's be honest. Like you said, jilted lover syndrome, the fact that the Big 12 is not going to like the fact that these two teams negotiated this behind their backs, in addition to the fact that the SEC and Big 12 do have some partnerships, including in the Sugar Bowl. So, yeah, there are going to be a lot of feelings involved, going to be a lot of math involved, going to be a lot of dollar figures involved. But now that the cat is out of the bag, and Dennis, you and I think, agree, the reason this is now public knowledge is because Texas A&M tried a last-minute effort to squash it at SEC Media Days. But now that it's out there, I think anything's possible. And like Dennis said, just like 10 years ago, everything's fluid. Every single hour, it seems like there's a new news item. So it's almost impossible to dig your heels in on one side or the other.
But Dennis, last night, didn't the Big 12 Brain Trust have a meeting to discuss this very topic?
Yeah, it was a phone call, a conference call with the 8 schools, suspiciously without Texas and Oklahoma, but not surprising. Trying to rally Texas and Oklahoma back into the league. I think we know that's not going to happen. There was a little talk about what's next, but I think everybody's going to head for the hills. Everybody's going to be concerned about their own interests, where they can get the next conference deal. Does the Big 12 be a hunter, or are they the hunt head? And I think they're going to be the hunt head. I don't see them as a hunter. I compare them on a line with the American right now, and I fully expect the American to take a shot at some or all of these schools and try to get them in the American. I think it's going to be the rush to the next super conference. Why did the SEC stop at 16? Could they go to 30? I had one administrator tell me, are we going to have 4 super conferences or 1? Does the SEC become college athletics? Does it replace the NCAA? Because as we know, Greg Sankey is super upset with the NCAA for how we got here. The Alston decision, how they implemented or didn't implement NIL. And they're just dragging their feet on almost every enforcement case out there. So it's going to be a new world. I think the fan just cares about the games, but how they look and who they play for is going to be different.
Yeah, and I think what Dennis mentioned about SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey being frustrated with the NCAA is really interesting because now there's a void in the power structure. So the SEC very easily could step in and become the leader, the organization that wields the most power in this new era of college football. But I tell you what, if I'm the Pac-12, if I'm first-year Commissioner George Klavakov, I am making every single phone call to the 8 remaining Big 12 schools to gauge their interest, because this is a chance for the Pac-12, which I think we'd all agree was the least powerful and least prominent of the Power 5 conferences prior to 2 days ago. It's a chance for the Pac-12 to really assert itself and become more of a power. So, yeah, I think Dennis is right. The Big 12 right now is going to be the hunted. And for me, if I'm any conference, but especially the Pac-12 with first-year commissioner George Klavakoff, I am burning up the phones of those other 8 teams in the Big 12.
You know, I'm watching back seasons of Survivor over on Paramount Plus, and of course, Tribal Council is all about blind sides and everything like that. And this seems like a classic blind side attempt, certainly here by Texas and OU. But when you look at those teams that are remaining in the Big 12, who appears the most likely to follow Texas and Oklahoma out the door, Dennis?
Well, I think the question is, of the remaining 8 teams, who is the most powerful, who is the most prominent? And I've kind of settled on Oklahoma State. You know, I guess you can make a case for Kansas State, but Oklahoma State has the most juice and maybe the biggest budget after Texas and Oklahoma. And Barrett's right. I think the Pac-12, although we don't trust the Pac-12 to do anything right, I think the Pac-12 has to take a very quick look at the likes of Texas Tech, Oklahoma State. I think Baylor's in real trouble just because of their NCAA history and the fact that they're a private school and they're not from a big market. But those 2 other schools, it might not sound sexy. In other words, the leftovers from the Big 12. But remember, in 2010, when the Pac-12 tried to make this raid, they were forced to take these other teams. It was Texas and Oklahoma, and those other teams weren't going to be included in the package unless Texas and Oklahoma, Pac-12, one of those other teams to figure out and to complete the deal. And Oklahoma State and Texas Tech were part of that. They're not great brand names, but they are Power 5 schools that maybe would enhance the TV package of the Pac-12 and get them out of last place. You know, their package expires in 2024. If they look like 14 or 16 teams, that's the decision now that has to be made by all these conferences. The Big 10 is on the clock now. They're going to be surpassed by the SEC in total revenue. What do they do? I think before the Pac-12 makes the decision, the Big Ten's got to go out there right now and take a hard look at a school like Carolina. Jim Delaney targeted them before he got Maryland or Rutgers. It was going to be Carolina, Virginia, Georgia Tech, some combination of those 3. And do they go after that first and try to upset the ACC? So right now, I think the best point is that it's every man for himself in trying to in conference realignment.
Yeah, and I think I agree with Dennis. Oklahoma State's probably the most powerful, but I think there's another aspect of this that we're not looking at. The Power 5 and the Group of 5, there's a line of delineation, right? Well, when the TV contracts are renegotiated and Texas and Oklahoma aren't in the Big 12, logic says the Big 12's not going to get nearly as much as it thought it would. So if you're the AAC, do you go get SMU? Do you go get Baylor? Do you go get Texas Tech? Do you go get TCU to bolster your conference? Because at that point, in the age of the new college football playoff, Power 5, Group of 5 doesn't really matter as much because you have 6 automatic bids for conference champions, no matter what conference they are. So I do think, yeah, it's easy to say the Big 12, those teams are going to go to a Power 5 conference, but the importance of a Power 5 conference has been diminished with the new playoff structure and will further be diminished because of the fact that, let's be honest, the new Big 12 TV contract without Texas and Oklahoma is going to be nowhere near where it should be. So, like Dennis, I think the AAC should pounce right now because it always touts itself as that Power 6 conference. It really could jump the Big 12 pretty easily here.
And there was some talk a number of years ago about some of those Group of 5 conferences perhaps merging to become a super conference. We'll see what the ripple effect is here with Texas and OU potentially headed to the SEC, certainly out of the Big 12. Dennis Dodd, go take your blood pressure because you've been high blood pressure all week long. And Barrett, Sallee, thanks for joining us both here to talk about this. Odds to win the college football playoff, it's Alabama, the defending champions, at plus 260. Clemson comes in next at plus 400. Then you have Ohio State in the Big 10. As mentioned, Big 10, maybe they're going to make some big moves. With this coming out, Oklahoma and Texas, they're plus 600. Oklahoma, and they're plus 750.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.